All right, guys. So I'd say let's kick it off. Don't want to waste too much time. It's a pleasure having the both of you here. I'm Patrick. I'm the host for today. I'm doing a little bit of moderation. So today we've got our first masterclass with Scott and Toby. So it's about building a composable Martech stack and open ecosystem. It's about flexibility, scalability, and speed. Really looking forward to doing that together now. Before that, let's just also let me give you some facts around it. So the session will be recorded. There is the comment section. So if there's any questions from you guys, just use the chat and we'll also have a look at that. We will also have a short interactive session in a minute. And yeah, I think let me just also give you a little bit of an insight just before we'll kick it off, what we will also tackle today. So we will speak about challenges in marketing, right? There are some. We will speak about that in a minute. There is some insights from you, Scott, about the Martech landscape. We will speak about composed stacks, from composable stacks to composable experiences. I think that will be nice. We will also speak about future-proof your Martech stack and about the entirely open ecosystem vision. And guess what? At the end, we will also speak about AI. We need to do that for sure, right? So now, let's kick it off. And so I'll hand it over to you, Scott. Would you just do a first intro to yourself?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. For those of you who aren't familiar with my work, I wear a couple hats. I've been the editor of the ChiefMartec blog for, my goodness, going on 17 years here, really looking at this intersection between the worlds of marketing and technology. I've written a couple books on the subject, Hacking Marketing, a more recent book on the new automation mindset. I also run the tech ecosystem at HubSpot, a Martech company as well too. And boy, if you've ever seen that crazy landscape, and if you haven't, you're going to see it shortly, of, mapping all the different marketing technology solutions, at least the ones we can find in the market. I am, for better and worse, the curator behind that as well too. Toby.
Thank you very much, Scott. It's a pleasure to have you here. So to introduce myself, Tobias Ackermann. I'm a member of the management board at Entirely, newly launched brand new. And otherwise, I'm the CEO of a company called Zenshare. I'm 20 years in the industry, mostly around Martech. I worked at companies such as Adobe, Omniture, Oracle, or Sage. And it's a pleasure to be here today and to talk to all of you. Over to Patrick.
Yeah, so thanks. I'm Patrick Moser, a member of the Entirely Management Board as well, same as Toby. Also working for Mama and for 15 years now, in the role now as co-CEO. So bringing quite a few thoughts around Martech and SaaS with me, and also speaking a lot about agility in marketing at the moment. And also it's all about creating impact, maximize the investments, and creating impact for our clients. But I'd say, Toby, now let's kick it off and get into the weeds.
All right. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. And let's just get it started by saying the three of us believe that marketing, how it works today and how it will be done in the future, is the brink of radical change. It's going to be transformed and revolutionized. Why is it? When you look at marketing today, we feel it's challenged. We're not saying that because we believe that ourselves. We're hearing that from customers a lot at the moment. And what we're hearing from customers, big international enterprise organizations, is that the complexity is exploding. There's ever more Martech available. So Scott will talk to this today as well. That management demands ever more results, focus on driving business impact, and that consumers, on the other hand, are expecting more. They want, in the age of AI and the internet, consumers continue to expect more, also out of Martech. And I think lastly, but very importantly, agentic AI is going to change the game. And we'll talk about that today, because I think we just asked that question last week in the conference. How many people believed at a conference that the future consumer is likely to be maybe not even a human being, but a bot as well, or their bots that will come to their organization asking questions about their products to try and make the best possible decision. So to kick it off, Scott and myself brought some research from Gartner to all of you to see whether that resonates with you. And there is some research done around the CMO's top strategic priorities for 2025. And I think no surprise to most of us, I believe, on top of the agenda are the priorities like driving growth, making sure there's a better customer experience, but also making sure that marketing drives more value to the business. Was that a surprise to you, Scott?
No, I mean, like again, the top of both of these, both the urgent questions, but also the challenges. It's like, okay, we need to drive growth, which is good. Marketing has become a very growth-focused, accountable function within most organizations now. But also on the challenge on the left here, and can you drive that growth under the constraints of rising costs and budget, budget limitations, which is forcing marketers to do, well, arguably what they do best, which is be creative, but they have to be creative with the technology and the operations as much as the strategy and the creative itself. And you even see that with some of the, challenges and questions that came a little bit further down there. I mean, for instance, like the fourth urgent question here, how can we improve marketing strategy, development, and execution amid disruption? You mentioned this in the opening here. We just know we are in an environment of significant disruption here. AI is triggering that not just from a level of like what we can do internally with our technology, but changing the way in which consumers, customers are going to be leveraging AI. And so we have to be able to adapt to that. You see another question, people realize they need to be able to continue to better allocate channel campaign resources. They need to improve cross-functional operating models and governance. And all these things, they're the right sort of business questions to focus on. But at the end of the day, in a technology digital environment, we have to think very carefully about the tech stack that we put in place to allow us to answer those questions and fulfill and address those challenges. So I don't know, maybe this is a good opportunity to move over to hearing a little bit from our audience as to what they hear as their most pressing challenges for
Absolutely.
2025.
Absolutely. So now it's time for everyone here. Please use the QR code or go to menti.com and use the code that you can see above and just give us 1 to 3 words. So what are the 3 most pressing challenges for you guys around consolidating Martech stacks, around composability, around AI, everything that was already kind of we already started speaking about. We will certainly do more, but happy to receive your thoughts around that. And then we can also bring that into our discussions. So waiting for the responses that might take a few seconds, and there you go. So it's too many tools, too many stakeholders. Questioning whether that was the same one or it's just a coincidence that it's about too many of everything.
Oh, these are great.
Avoid the content tsunami. I can see there if I got it right.
Content tsunami is an interesting stat because we heard that from a couple of customers as well, that in the old days when you're running a brand campaign, how many assets you had and how many assets you have today when you're running a brand campaign that has more than, I don't know, more than
I think
10.
it's really interesting there to see, because all right, there are different variations of the too many tools in there, so we should definitely talk about that. But yeah, you start to see the popping here of things around integration and automation, which we'll definitely dig into here, because there's some things we can do about the total number of tools. But yeah, I do think the larger thing is, given whatever tool set you have, like how do you approach getting them to work better together? Whether it's 5 tools or 50 tools, that integration really is the key to making this manageable.
Right. And so what I can see here is, right, there's automation, integration, and budget, the most obvious or the most voted ones. So what's your take on that? How is that also maybe connected to composability? And I mean, integration, I think this is pretty clear. It's a lot about Mach architectures. But still, I guess everything around budget might incorporate also the point about, doing more with less money, but then also being more efficient with AI and always in this kind of loop. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's an interesting interplay here. And when we, a couple slides here, we'll actually go through the latest data on the MarTech landscape, is we have this balance we're trying to strike between using the best possible tools to achieve the outcomes we want. And in some ways, actually, having a lot of tools out in the market isn't necessarily a bad thing from the perspective of you want a certain amount of competition among vendors. You want your vendors to be competing to offer you the best capabilities at the best possible price. And that's often been the motivation of why people think about these best of breed MarTech stacks. It's not just because they love having, a certain count of tools. It's because, hey, how do we get the most capability for the most value? But in order to make that work, integration has got to be at the heart of that. If you're going to have a best of breed stack, you've got to be able to have these pieces work together. And so definitely in today's session, we'll talk a bit about some of the models of how to make that happen.
Maybe just to underline it, Scott, I also saw some very interesting research from Gartner that some of the best brands that do B2B and B2C marketing have on average more ISVs within the MarTech stack than others. So it's not going to go away, this best of breed and best of need use case driven approach.
Well, maybe that's a good segue here then to, oh my goodness, bring up the slide that I suspect, again, a number of you have seen. And I apologize if this makes your eyes hurt. But yeah, this is one of the things I've been tracking over the past 14, 15 years in MarTech is just the exponential growth in the number of different technologies that are available to marketers. I mean, you go back a decade or so when we were talking about hundreds of tools, and even that seemed like a lot. But in an environment that has now grown to thousands and thousands of tools, up to over 14,000 last year, boy, this is just an entirely different software environment than anything had preceded it. And if you feel this is challenging on, the marketing side, I mean, you can take a breath, and I assure you, we're seeing the same dynamic everywhere else, around tools for, developer stacks, for tools in the finance department. I mean, fintech alone is probably like twice the size of, the MarTech space. And so it's just been a shift in the nature of how software is created and the abundance of software that exists out in the market. I mean, it's gotten to the point where even if you zoom in on one of these slides, it's still completely unreadable. We have a website, martechmap.com. You can zoom in even further if you want. But it's almost really impossible at this point to really distill it just looking at a slide. It almost is more helpful to step back and okay, just let's look at this quantitatively. So over this 14-year period, I mean, we know marketing has changed a lot, but it's sometimes hard to quantify the scale of that change. And I would humbly suggest to you that the growth in the MarTech landscape is one real artifact, that gives us a sense of just how much change has happened to marketing over the past decade. And I mean, you can put a number on it, like 9,300%. And for a while, right, we had this exponential growth in the early years. And then, coming into, 2020, 2021, it looked like it was finally starting to level off. And then last year, boy, it suddenly rocketed up again, exploded like an additional 3,000 tools. I don't know, what's your thoughts on any guesses as to why that might be?
I was just going to ask you, Scott, because you're obviously doing a lot of research around it. What do you attribute this to, this big, even steeper increase from 23 to 24?
Well, it probably won't come as a surprise to a lot of folks here, but we have the data. Almost all of that growth is through AI. Just an incredible wave of new AI tools, both because AI is accelerating the speed at which people are able to create new software, but also these AI capabilities are opening up so many innovative new possibilities for what we can do in our digital operations, for how we can evolve the way we engage with customers. So there's, a lot of innovation happening, and it's not just new products. I mean, you've seen this across pretty much most of the marketing technology tools out there, that they're all continuing to innovate with this as well too, and adding new features and finding new ways to bring AI capabilities to their existing customers. So it's definitely a very exciting time. But one of the things I guess I should point out, because whenever we talk about, thousands and thousands of tools, it begs the question of well, wait a second, why are there even why are there even these many different possible tools? I mean, like, don't I just need like one or two or three? And the truth is, if you looked at this landscape of marketing technologies, they're not all equal. If you looked at even the relative scale of these different technologies and you ordered them that way, it would form what they call a long tail distribution, right? There's a relatively small number of companies that are in the head. There are then, few hundred companies, I would say, that are in the torso that really are leaders in their particular category. But then beyond that, you have this incredible long tail of all these more specialized tools, whether some of them are, hyper tailored for a particular vertical or a particular function. We're starting to see more and more ecosystems around technology tools that enhance and augment them. And even like many, many services businesses, this blending of the line between being a software company and a services company, those boundaries have been blurring so that you're seeing even some of the service companies help create some of their own custom software that plugs in to the rest of the Martech stack to be able to serve their clients. And this is just a really powerful capability when we're in an environment that is constantly changing. Going back to that Gartner research where, like we recognize, okay, we're in a period of disruption. We know things are changing. We might not even fully know all the things that will have to change over the next 1, 2, or 3 years, but we know we're going to have the capability to adapt to those changes. And that is really the driving force behind the composability movement that I'm sure you've been hearing quite a bit about here in the marketing and MarTech space. It's almost gotten to the point that like composability is a bit of a buzzword. And so I want to break it down because it actually does have real meaning and real value to you. When we think about composability, it's really about being able to bring different pieces together in a way that the combination, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And we can think about composability at many different levels. There can be composability of your MarTech stack. What is your MarTech stack? Well, it's a combination of different tools, and that combination gives you a set of capabilities that goes far beyond what any one set of tool or one particular tool off on its own silo or some other tool in a different silo. It's the bringing of them together, the composing of them into an integrated stack, we'll underline the word integrated stack, unlocks this additional value for you. But then we also have platforms and products themselves that are specifically designed to be composable. They're designed to help you be able to bring different data and services together. And ultimately, all of this is in the service of how do we compose customer experiences that are really meaningful, that help differentiate our business in the marketplace. It is, bringing together the right different pieces of data, the right different services together into an experience that customers are going to find truly delightful. Now, again, this composability, we're hearing a lot about it here these past few years, but I also want to just step back and assure you this is not some newfangled concept. That the whole concept of composability has frankly been around for decades and decades in software. I've put together a little bit of a map here of, some ways we compose are more technical, some ways in which we compose things are less technical. To just give you a couple examples, a very technical example would be the way software has been built for the past 3 or 4 decades. I mean, anytime a programmer goes to build a piece of software, they're not starting from a completely blank slate, right? They're bringing together different libraries or different frameworks. Increasingly in the cloud, they'll be calling more different API services. And that's incredibly powerful because they're taking these things that already exist and they're bringing them together and then building on top of that to deliver a new value. That composability is part of why the software world, has been so incredibly productive over these past few decades. Okay, that's great for software engineers, but if you're a marketer, if you're a business person, you're like, okay, well, that doesn't really apply to me. So let me give you an example on the other end of the spectrum. I would argue that a spreadsheet is a perfect example of a business user's composability. I mean, what does a spreadsheet let us do? It lets us bring together different data, combine it however we want, be able to perhaps add some sort of new layer of analysis or scenario planning on it and get something of a larger value out. than what we just put in from the raw data itself. We compose things in spreadsheets all the time. Marketers in particular compose things in spreadsheets all the time, and it's incredibly powerful. Now, here's where things get even more exciting, right? All right, so we know we want this composability to be adaptable, and we can now recognize that, yeah, composability is not a newfangled buzzword. This is part of how technology works. What's really exciting is one of the things that is changing with AI is it used to be for a lot of different kinds of composing opportunities to compose things, they did require fairly technical skills. But AI is starting to provide more and more of a layer that lets less technical individuals be able to compose more and more things together. And so we'll talk a little bit more here about AI, but I think this is one of the things that's like really powerful about why you want to think, as a marketer, of your strategy for marketing operations and marketing technology is to facilitate as much of this composability as possible. I mean, when I think about how marketing is changing with AI, there's a lot of concerns of like, okay, well, yeah, if we start using AI to, do more of this production work for us, more of the analytics work for us, what is going to be left for marketing to do? I assure you, there is plenty left for marketing to do. In fact, before AI, you could say, even though we recognize the importance of strategy and creative, and we recognize the importance of Martech and marketing operations, so much of our calories went into the manual production analysis of trying to live up to those strategic and creative visions we had. And as we start to see AI give us much greater leverage on the production and analysis side, I think two things become really true. First of all, like it allows us to get more calories put on strategy and creative. And one of the things I love most about marketers is there's this constant fund of like new ideas, and theses and hypotheses and experiments they want to run. And frankly, the real constraint there has been like, okay, well, how much effort is it going to take to do that? How much will it cost? How long will it take? And so as we start to use AI to loosen those constraints, it's going to free up marketers to be able to lean into much greater experimentation, try out a lot more ideas in the marketplace. And it's really through trying these ideas and experimenting, that we find what the gold is. And on the other side, to make sure that that engine actually works, we need to, have the opportunity to invest more in getting our Martech stack and our marketing operations processes really designed to be able to not only take advantage of AI, but more broadly be able to take advantage of any of these sorts of new technological shifts that we want to be able to bring in to our Martech environment. So I'm going to turn this over to Toby here in a second, but there's one more thing I want just sort of plant in your seed, a seed I want to plant in your mind, which is, for years with this explosion of marketing technology, the approach we've tried to take, or that many people have advocated for, is simply consolidation. It's simply saying like, okay, yeah, there's a bunch of tools in our Martech stack. Let's just consolidate them down to a few. And I think we can say after 15 years of trying that, consolidation alone isn't getting the job done. Yes, by all means, if there are tools you don't need, if there are tools that are duplicative, you should absolutely rationalize your stack. But the thing is, we are in such a creative environment of so many new technologies changing so quickly. Consolidation alone isn't sufficient. We are going to have these diverse heterogeneous tech stacks, but as even your feedback at the beginning of this session of like, okay, I got too many tools, my big challenges here are integration, we need to have an architecture that allows us to get these tools to work together. And to me, this is a model not of consolidation, but of aggregation, this ability to be able to bring multiple things together and have some sort of common framework around them that allows us to orchestrate them and manage them as a more cohesive whole. Now, there's one more interesting twist on this, which is, okay, you start thinking about your Martech stack, not just trying to consolidate, but trying to have aggregation of data and services across multiple tools. This pattern doesn't just apply to Martech stacks. It's actually possible for this to apply to Martech companies. And this is one of the reasons we're having this session, this series of sessions, with myself and Entirely here, is Entirely is one of the companies that's pioneering this model of saying we can actually bring together, the best technologies in different technology, from different categories, but we can do them in a way that provides an aggregated business model. So that you are able to both tap the best of, the best tools in each particular category, but you're able to do so in a way of having a technical framework that makes sure these things work together, that they integrate together, but also that you have a business entity that can help facilitate the way in which you make these purchase decisions. And so it's very exciting to me. I will let Toby and Patrick, tell you more about that. But right before I hand over on that, I just want to come back to like one last screen here, of thinking about like, okay, how does this all translate down into very specific technologies within your Martech stack? With all this talk about AI, it's perhaps easy to think of like, well, wait a second, is my whole tech stack just going to completely change? And it's just going to be all this new stuff with AI and, oh, like, I don't even know what all this new stuff would be. My humble belief is the answer is no. It's not like your existing tech stack, is going to go away, and certainly no time soon. In fact, actually, a lot of the core technologies that power your Martech stack today are going to need to be the same systems that power it for the next 5 and 10 years. We need these, systems of, not just systems of record, but systems of truth. The things are organizing the right data across our organization so that we can feed it into applications as needed. We've talked before about systems of engagement as the touch points, customers. I would almost put a little twist on that and say it's not just about engagement, it's about context. As we have more and more different digital touch points between our employees and our customers, having these systems be able to deliver the right experience in context to each of them, that is actually where I think some of these new AI technologies that will layer on top of your existing tech stack have so much value to offer. But to make that work, you need to have this be an open ecosystem. You need to have the ability to aggregate so that, any sort of new AI technologies you bring into your stack, whether it's with an existing tool or a new tool, that's able to plug into a larger tech stack ecosystem. So Toby, I don't know, what's your take on, future-proofing your Martech stack?
Well, thank you very much, Scott. That was really interesting and inspiring. And I'd like to summarize a little bit what you were saying, but also combine it with the vision that Entirely is now pursuing. So I will also add a little twist to it. So the Martech stack that you just presented, this classical stack view, we think more of it as a graph view, right? But it's the same view, it's just a little bit more 3D dimensional. So it also has systems of truth at the heart, but also systems of context wrapped around it. And we believe in the future, probably a lot of AI working within it, not just within an organization, but also with consumers. So I think the audience is probably asking themselves, what you heard from Scott now, you mentioned a lot of the core principles of composability, right? We talked about modularity, interoperability, scalability, and flexibility, not just in how Martech solutions are used, but also how customer experiences are being composed, right? And how they're going to be orchestrated in the future. So I think it probably comes to no surprise to anyone what some of the benefits are of having such an architecture. You would expect that an organization will have high good degree of agility, right? Maybe also reduced vendor lock-in. We have heard from a lot of organizations that are also arguing that the Martech stacks are underutilized at times, but they are solidly licensed, right? So that's also a challenge in the industry. And obviously, a key benefit would also be to have higher cost effectiveness and be able to deliver more ROI and optimize the ROI as you evolve it, but also improve data management and customer insights. And why would companies need to strive for that at the moment? I think we believe fundamentally, the three of us, that the future competitive advantage will revolve around being able to deliver a hyper-personalized customer experience at scale to drive very specific business outcomes. How does that resonate with you, Scott?
I mean, this all resonates with me, but I would say one thing I would emphasize here is the vendor lock-in component of this. you know your tech stack is going to need to adapt as time goes by. And the greatest leverage you have with any vendor is to be in a position of knowing that you can always move to whatever the best solution is for you at that point in time, you know? And so if you have these closed systems that are creating lock-in, it becomes an artificial barrier to you having the optionality you need to be able to adapt moving forward. I mean, the right kind of vendor lock-in is, oh my God, this vendor is delivering exactly what we need. They're so great in the service they offer. The pricing is always fair. That's the sort of lock-in that you want to have between a vendor and a customer, you know, not something that's like, okay, well, it's this closed system, you know, that once the data goes in, I never get the data out. That's just not sustainable in today's environment.
Thanks, Scott. And obviously on our end, on the Entirely side, we just went through a process this past year where we worked with a number of industry-leading analysts from Gartner and Forrester, but also with our customers and our partners and our ISVs and iconic people in the industry like Scott Brinker, obviously as well, to define what is actually the market need. Because for us, it's very important to be close to the customers and really understand what the market needs. And if I may describe it here, we believe that the market need actually, when you look at this kind of an environment in Martech at the moment, is really asking for an open ecosystem to enable every enterprise customer to get more of their existing Martech stack, not to add new. Maybe that is an ability that's very important, as Scott mentioned, but to get more out of the existing technology investment already. But also, I think what we're seeing a lot is this theme, which we describe as a Martech DNA, unifying it across your Martech stack and making sure that all the dots are connected in your Martech loop. That sounds simple, but it isn't simple because every single Martech tool has its own campaign DNA and structure sometimes. So campaign taxonomy, streamlining that and unifying that is a core ability. But also, Scott mentioned this a couple of times, the ability to orchestrate maybe the experience with AI and adopt AI. That sounds simple on paper, but what we're starting to see within organizations is that's not so simple because they've got a lot of different data silos, a lot of different technologies that don't natively talk to one another. And I think the need is clearly also to be able for marketers to have tailored solutions, scalable solutions, adaptable solutions, but also, especially in Europe, I think GDPR needs to be built in by design, and in the future, potentially even the regulation of AI, which we are anticipating. So this is this need that we described. So where does that take us? I'd like to introduce all of you and welcome all of you to the open ecosystem of Entirely. We believe it's the first of its kind. We believe that the future of Martech is more than connected. It's aligned. I think it's really calling for a flexible approach to bring together the best innovative solutions in the industry, both of established but also emerging partners and vendors, by embracing basically complexity, to unlock the potential to deliver real measurable results, and we would like to support you on that journey. So let me talk just a little bit about the vision of Entirely. Entirely is an open ecosystem enabling customers to drive business outcomes at scale. So in order to achieve this, our ecosystem is basically built on some key strategic tenets, such as mock architecture, making sure that we achieve that. So Entirely also consists of 4 different founding partners today. And these founding partners have the same problem that we have to solve within Entirely that the full Martech industry has. So it's this ability to ensure that we can orchestrate services holistically with a more holistic marketing approach across all the solutions. But also AI, we heard a lot about AI, making sure that we can really support enterprises to leverage AI to its full potential to drive business outcomes. And I think we also recognize and heard that a couple of times, this is not just about technology, this is actually also about people. So Entirely will also be offering bundled know-how to support these transformations with people within your organizations. So we will be providing knowledge and support across this transformational path. And lastly, but very importantly, this capability to integrate ISVs. So really empowering enterprises to drive ISV integration at scale in order to achieve better insights, more flexibility, higher levels of interoperability, and really the capability to orchestrate composable marketing experience across their holistic tech stack. How does that resonate with you, Scott?
I mean, I think my two favorite words are open and ecosystem. And again, this, just goes back to where we started. What are the challenges? We've got this incredible state of disruption that the world is in that, presents both threats, but so many opportunities for how businesses evolve. But it is so important to be able to not have these things fragment inside our organization, but to actually be getting greater cohesion and greater orchestration. And the only way you do that is by being able to have things integrate. And the only way things integrate is if you have these open systems at the heart of your MarTech stack. And so, it's funny, like we think about these as ecosystems around the vendors, right? There's an ecosystem, of ISVs and partners around Entirely. But I'd also say that, for marketers here in the audience here, thinking about your own tech stack as kind of an ecosystem of its own as well, too, is really the right mental model. And the great thing about ecosystems is they're inherently designed to adapt and evolve. And that's exactly the capability we need in today's environment.
Thank you, Scott. And just adding to it, right? It's a lot about people as well. And that is why Entirely is a catalyst for marketing that matters. And for us, that means much more than building technology for customers and use cases, but also creating a community. Now, we want to bring together customers in the industry analysts, ISVs, and we want to make sure that we revolutionize how marketing can matter again, how it will be redefined, basically. We believe there will be a fundamental restructuring of how Martech works. And maybe just briefly, we are working on 3 specific capabilities within Entirely. So the first one is really orchestration. So running more campaigns faster, more unified, more reliable to deliver precise actions, driving business outcomes. But you could also think of orchestration around being able to orchestrate what's happening across the different MarTech solutions and making sure that there's mutual benefit and that there is really always an understanding of what business outcome you're trying to drive and that you have a highly composable customer experience that can be delivered in hyper-personalized fashion. But also curation, the ability to create relevant personalized experiences to drive sales, customer satisfaction and retention. That sounds easy, but it's not, because you need all of your content interconnected. And we believe that AI basically will take over the orchestration of those highly composable customer experiences in the future. So you need the backbone for curation that's highly interconnected, not just with your systems of truth, but with your systems of context, and maybe all of the other systems that you hold in your backend, as an example, your ERP system. And then the third capability is about the ability to scale. So really making sure that that all the MarTech that you're using today can be interconnected with an open ecosystem, really enabling a seamless outcome-driven customer experience across all of your channels consistently. Also, that sounds simple, but we're learning from a lot of marketers today that is not so easy to achieve. So let me just take a second and summarize that a little bit. So Entirely is an open ecosystem enabling this, really enabling you on the call as well to drive business outcomes at scale. That's our mission. And in the process, we would like to learn from you as well how we can do this. So
Toby, I'm just also taking over here. One question out of the audience, which is maybe also fitting in quite well now into that next chapter about getting your content and data AI ready. So I'll just also read it out loud for you so that you can also, maybe also tackle that a bit. So the question is, in the context of composable MarTech, what are the advantages and challenges of building your own AI solutions in-house versus relying on the AI solutions provided by third-party vendors? And how does each approach impact flexibility, customization, scalability, and overall control over the MarTech stack? I think it's a great question. That's more on the preparation around that, but maybe also you have some thoughts around that. question.
It's
Thanks.
a fabulous question. Thank you very much, David Reef. I know you, very technologically savvy. Fabulous. So let me just look at the question or pick it up a little bit later, because I think I will just hit on this, but I will start first with quickly talking about this trend that Scott talked about. So there's so many AI tools available now, but I think I just would like to emphasize briefly here that before we start to just look at tools and features and functions and new trends and Martech becoming available, it's very important that we also think about our content and data, and that we question whether the content and data that we hold within our organizations today is really AI ready, right? Because what we're seeing is, even if there are a lot of new technologies available at scale, every week we hear all the news and new startups and so on, there will be adoption challenges when we try to implement that internally if our data and content is not really AI ready. So what does that mean? So it's the ability to align data and content. So it's simple concepts, nothing new, right? It's accessibility, structure, semantics, metadata around them, that it's accurate and high quality. Maybe it should even be fair and diverse to some extent, but also making sure it can be visualized in graphs as an example. So that's just one ability. But the other thing that's also changing with AI is that your data and content needs to be continuously qualified. So for consistency, it needs to be continuously validated and verified. Maybe there's going to be regression testing on it as well, or you're trying to create the next best offer behind it as well. You need observability, and you need to monitor what's happening and maybe even have detection algorithms there. So we believe that in this continuous qualification, bots and AI will play a big role. And then lastly, I think what we expect, especially in Europe much more, is this contextually governed, right? What does that mean? We believe there will be ever more governance guardrails need to be set around your content and data as well, whether these are AI standards or how data is being shared internally, externally, whether it's regulatory compliance, or maybe even in the future at some point, the ability for consumers to tell your organization what level of AI you are allowed to use, right? That's not regulated so far, but we anticipate it a little bit in Europe, maybe not so much in the US right now. But also making sure that there is a full audit trail of what maybe you've done with AI when the consumer comes in to ask you fair questions around what you've done with the data, how you're storing it, how you're processing it, and so on. Right? So I think in order to get the benefits of all the AI being available and all the tech, and whether you're building your own or buying it externally, I think it's important to really focus on this, getting your content and data AI ready in the first step to really be able to unlock full value. How does that resonate with you, Scott?
100%. And I see we got a perhaps related question that came in. One of the folks in the audience asking, fair question, what does open mean? Flexible interfaces or a layer of data like a CDP? And the short answer is a little bit of both. Like, first and foremost, I think of it at the data layer. You know, you want the ability to bring any of the relevant data to a particular application into it. It's got to have interfaces that allow you to bring that data into your environment. But just as importantly, you have to have the ability to pull the data out. You know, it's your data. It's not the vendor's data. It's your data, you know, and particularly with, you know, in answer to that last question, you know, as people are experimenting both with different commercial AI tools, but also some custom AI technologies that they might be experimenting with as well too, that ability to pull the data in their tech stack where they want it, when they want it, is just incredibly valuable. Now, there are layers of integration above and beyond that. There is this question of like, okay, from API services and how do we interface to things from one product to another, you know, whether that's at the workflow layer or at the user interface layer, or even just the governance layer, making sure that, right, we're adhering to enforcing GDPR, you know, across the different tools that are sharing data within our tech stack. All of those are dimensions where when you're looking at a Martech product to say like, okay, is this an open product? Those are the criteria that, you know, you look at to say like, yes, I can adapt this into my tech stack the way I want.
And maybe just picking up now on David Reef's question here as well. I think there will be both, right? I think we see a lot of customers building their own AI, especially in areas where they want to be unique. They want to be unique, they want to be highly differentiated. So maybe sometimes that revolves around creating the next best offer as an example, but also recognizing patterns within the data to build that into their operational models, right? Whereas where you buy AI from vendors at the moment, it depends what we're looking at there. When you look at tech vendors in Martech, I would argue a lot of them are building, how shall I put it, features and functions on top of their Martech that reduce the user workload, maybe make it a little bit easier to work with, and maybe as an example have automated meta tagging as an example. But those are not really the transformative use cases, because I think it shouldn't be unrecognized that AI has the potential to change and transform any user experience out there, right? And that AI will become, to some level, we've seen it in Gen AI already and other AI models, it will become a commodity as well. So I think any brand probably has to ask themselves, where do I really want to be highly differentiated and unique? And what does that mean in terms of AI models? And where do I not want to train a public model maybe? And where is it okay for AI to be commodity, as an example? That would be my take. So if we move ahead, just a word on Entirely. Why Entirely, right? We briefly mentioned it earlier. Entirely was formed by 4 founding partners, Senshare, Elaine, Facelift, and Marmind. We are roughly 2,800 customers today. We have a relatively international presence with 12 locations, and we're supporting a lot of the top brands that are going through restructuring the Martech stacks, but also experimenting how they could use the power of AI more effectively internally. And I will also admit it, we're at the beginning of this journey, and maybe some of our top customers right at the moment, we are starting to work with to really define what an open ecosystem means. And Scott just defined it, how he defined open. Probably how we define open is that we are not trying to lock any customer into our Martech stack. We even prepared to disrupt our own business by building technology that really wraps around the needs of our customers. So that's maybe the short answer there. So with this, I will take it to some of the key takeaways, Scott. So what do we would like people to take away from this session? So the first one is, I think, don't just think about AI, right? Think about your content and data as well and making that ready, right? And then I think what Scott talked a lot about, maybe I'll let you talk about this, Scott, is really making sure you try to establish an enterprise-wide open ecosystem across your Martech stack.
Yeah, I mean, getting your content and data AI ready is absolutely a good foundation, right? You need the data to be, in the right quality, the right shape. But then the next thing is like, how do you make sure you can get that data where it needs to be anywhere within your tech stack? And that's really where the enterprise-wide open ecosystem is essential to have the fluidity and the flow of that data within your environment.
But also, as you said, Scott, I think it will also allude to the fact that marketers will need to think about the concept of building a highly composable customer experience. And I think that will be one of the next sessions, but don't want to take the thunder from Patrick. But the third thing here is as well is I think what sometimes gets a little bit lost in these conversations around Martech stacks is also try to think about the jobs to be done. What are the jobs to be done within the marketing organization, right? It's also this flow of how do I move from budgeting to planning to campaign planning to activation to building assets to personalizing assets to distributing assets to scaling those assets across all my digital touch points, whether there's marketing automation being used or social media orchestration as an example. How can you make sure you get a holistic process that's interconnected within your organization, but not just across the Martech stack, but also from a planning perspective? You might have your board thinking about some strategic themes that you need to operationalize, but you will clearly also have regions planning their marketing plans of countries and functions. And how can you make sure it's all interconnected so that if someone within your business, let's take a country and the functional role within it, is looking at their marketing plan, that marketing plan is still making sense and people know what the next action will be and how you're managing not just the budget, but the resources and what business outcomes you're going to be driving with such an interconnected plan. And lastly, what we also put up here is think about business outcomes when investing. We are seeing, I think, also a lot of marketers that are looking at the next cool thing to add to the Martech stack, right? Sometimes. And I think it's quite interesting to think about what does that actually drive in terms of business outcomes? Or as Scott said very nicely, think of your own ecosystem when you look at your Martech stack. Is that the right ecosystem for yourself? And is that driving value, business outcomes to your organization?
Well said.
Right. Right. Well said. I think those are great takeaways. And I also I was writing down one message from your side, Scott. So it was about the whole is better than the sum of its parts. So if someone is like, after all, saying, well, actually, again, what is this all about? I guess that could be something worth just remembering, because if you think about it, it's about getting the content right before you jump into the I train. It's about an open ecosystem, which is the whole, right? It's about composability, bringing all those things together. It's about the end-to-end jobs that we're looking at. And it's also about ROI, which is actually tied quite nicely back into the idea of the word cloud that we've seen. The budget was right in the center of pressuring challenges this year, right? So getting things done with less budget. So I'd say we are already 50 minutes online. So thanks a lot. I think that was great. Let me just really also wrap it up. What's next? So as we said, it's a masterclass session series. So there's in not even 3 weeks, the next session. So everyone who was in here and did not register yet for the second session, please do that now. There's the QR code right there. It will be around the real world use cases driving omnichannel success with integrated platforms with such cases. It's clients from us. It's Springer Nature with Alexander, and it's Otto with Stefan Hood. Really looking forward to doing that. Again, it was a pleasure having you, Toby and Scott. I think we learned a lot again, so much insights around that. So also let me just use the chance to tell about the community that we are just building. So we will also have an Entirely Summit in 2025. That will be in October in Lisbon. So everyone who wants to go for some kind of summer in October, that's the place you should go, right? So there is already save the dates. There is social media already online around that, and we'll keep you informed. And again, there's the QR code there. So please register for save the date. We will create a community for marketing that matters. And finally, again, thank you for joining us. Let's keep the conversation going. See you in part 2. Thanks a lot, guys. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.